Hi, everybody on Zoom. Thank you for your patience. We're going to wait a couple more minutes to make sure everyone here is settled, and then we'll get started with the program. But thank you so much for being here. For those of you in person, thanks for making out if you're in the rain. But yeah, we'll get started soon. Let's talk about the Generations exhibit.
Hmm.
Okay, I think now's a good time to officially get started. Hi, everyone. If you're in the Zoom room, you're here for the Generation Stories of Asian Americans in Richmond Talk Story, which is our July Talk Story program. My name is Ting-Yi Oei. I am the Talk Story Programs Manager here at the 1882 Foundation. I'm really excited to have this program here today that's being led by our Education Director, Ting-Yi. For those of you who are not familiar with 1882, the 1882 Foundation was founded about a dozen years ago as a project to get Congress to apologize for Chinese exclusion laws. Since successfully achieving that goal, we are now very dedicated to spreading, creating programs and educating people about the impact of Chinese exclusion laws, as well as telling history of Chinese Americans. So we have monthly talk story programs where we also invite people to come and share things with their own stories and their own voices, which is very apt for looking at the exhibit that all of you have been working on is talking about as well. So without further ado, Ting-Yi, please take it away, and we're excited to hear about this exhibit.
Thank you, Mia. And I'm really very pleased to really share a program that does grow out of the kind of thing that Mia just mentioned, which is taking our stories and the model that we have through Talk Story and bringing it to other communities and being able to show what we can do in different places around the DMV, but also eventually have some national programs that might do the same thing as well. So I have three guests here with me today. Meg Hughes of the Valentine Museum in Richmond, Rosario Igaras, who is from the Asian American Society
of... see, guys. Where are you?
Oh, excuse me. Yes, so I'll just repeat that. Rosario Igaras from the Asian American Society of Central Virginia, and Dave Pearson, who is from Richmond, Virginia, and was the photographer for the exhibition. I just want to say a few things about how the exhibition came to be and its origin, and then Meg will explain a lot more about how we came to partner with her and the Valentine's role in all of this. But way back, I think it was maybe 2017 or so, there was an exhibition being started in New York in the Tenement Museum, which is a small museum in New York, but it does a wonderful job of explaining the immigrant experience. And we wanted to participate in that, and so we had people from people in the area, in New York that is, submit photographs with an object of importance to them, and they would tell a story. It was called Your Story, Our Story, and it was a digital exhibition, so there wasn't any physical component to it, but it still is actually ongoing. If you go to Your Story, Our Story at the Tenement Museum's website, you can see about that. So we want to take that idea and see what we could do to tell local stories. And since I live in Petersburg, Virginia, not in DC, in the DC area so much anymore, I wanted to be able to share some of the stories that come out of the Richmond area. And so we started looking for partners, and that's how I came to meet Meg. And Meg, I'm going to turn it over to you, explain a little bit about what the Valentine is, and then also go to explain how it was that you and I got involved, and then we'll go on from
Oh,
there.
cool.
Great. So, hi,
Can
everyone.
you see if it's the same price? Sometimes I charge you more. Oh, good.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Meg Hughes. I'm with the Valentine Museum. So I'll give you a little bit of background in case you're not familiar with us. We are Richmond's history museum. So we have been around for a long time, since 1898. We've been collecting, preserving, and interpreting Richmond's history, and that includes the city of Richmond as well as the surrounding counties. And we are located in downtown Richmond. We have exhibition galleries and 2 historic structures as well. We have a really active city tour program and do school programs for thousands of students in the Richmond area every year. And so we are an actively collecting museum. And so with that, we know that there are certain parts of Richmond's history that we have pretty well covered. We've got a lot of objects and photographs and documents that document those parts of Richmond's history. And we know that there's some parts of Richmond's history that we don't have well documented. And that could be both things that happened a long time ago for which we don't have those material objects to document those things that happened in the past, and also contemporary history. We collect to the present, as we say. Something doesn't have to be 50, 100 years old for us to collect it, but we are trying to actively collect what's currently going on in the region today. And so with that, we sometimes have these projects where we work with community partners to create new materials that didn't exist prior to the project to help us better document the Richmond region. And so that is really sort of why we were interested in the Generations project. During the pandemic, I think around 2022 or so, I got an email from Ting-Yi. Never had met him before, but he pitched this idea, and we started talking, and lo and behold, several years later, this exhibition opened last week. And so it's been a really fantastic collaborative experience. And a project like this can't happen without wonderful project partners. And so I'll turn it over to our next panelist to be able to talk a little bit about that, Ting-Yi.
I just want to add one thing too, for people who are not really familiar with where Richmond is. I know I was speaking to some people just last week about the fact that we have this exhibition, and they go, "Where is Richmond? How far is it from DC?" And so I have to explain to them, but it's really actually pretty accessible if you don't consider the traffic too much, and figure out how to come down to Richmond. But it's funny how people really in Northern Virginia tend to dissociate themselves from really a lot of things going on in Virginia. Rosario, let me ask you about AASoCV and explain a little bit about that and what your involvement is with that, and also what the organization is involved in.
Yeah, so good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rosario Icaras, and I'm here to represent the Asian American Society of Central Virginia. It's an organization, a 501(c)(3) organization that was founded in 1998. And we do, the mission of the organization is to promote unity, harmony, and cooperation among the different communities in Central Virginia. We have about 17 member communities, and each community sends at least 3 representatives to the board of trustees of the AASoCV. And our biggest project, our biggest activity is an Asian American celebration, which we hold every May, and we've been doing that for the past 27 years. And it's attended by a lot of people. We hold it at the Greater Richmond Convention Center. And this exhibit, when Ting-Yi approached us to be a community partner, just fit in with our mission. And it's, we always try and share our story, want to celebrate our history, the culture of each community. And so we happily accepted
And how did you personally get involved with the project?
I volunteered. I actually volunteered because I was just, I thought it was a great opportunity. I've never, I don't think it's ever been done before. And, it's a Valentine Museum, a museum with great reputation. And we have, we're given this opportunity to share our stories.
Which community do you represent?
I represent the Filipino community, and I'm a treasurer of the Filipino American Association of Central Virginia.
I think when we have an opportunity to look at some of the slides here in a little bit, you'll see that there's Filipino representation. I believe in the slides that we have. Perhaps, I'm not sure, I don't remember now. Here. Thank you. I'll turn it over here to Dave now to explain a little bit of what his role was. I'll say this as just as part of the overall thing. I'll give away the part is that that you are the photographer for it.
That is correct.
But you have another life too.
Yes, my name is Dave Pearson. I was a photographer for the project, and it was really interesting, I think, how I got involved with it, because by day I'm an engineer with Dominion Energy, and I teach engineers how to be engineers. By night, I'm a photographer, and I usually do opera, ballet, and hardcore heavy metal and everything in between. But I also do a lot of cultural events. One of them is an Asian American celebration in Richmond. And I've been working with one of the AASoCV members, Jay Lee, for several years. And she suggested that I apply for this position. Well, I'm not usually a portrait photographer. And I think when I sent my examples in to you to look at, I think it was 10 pictures. 5 of them were actually portraits that were planned, and that was about 50% of the portraits that I took. But I like to think of myself as not a portrait photographer. I don't take pictures, I take stories. And I think that's really what worked here. And it's just been an absolute phenomenal experience. And I think we can talk about the rest later, but it's just been a wonderful experience.
Thank you. And I think, the whole storytelling aspect of it is really the most important of it. And one of the things that I noticed when we were there with the opening last Sunday is that several people commented on the fact they liked how the pictures were accompanied by stories that
Yes.
people told of their own experiences as immigrants, at becoming part of life of Richmond and becoming really a part of America. And that's really kind of a key thing. Are there certain things that you took away from those kinds of stories yourself, Meg, and how you kind of learned to appreciate those stories?
I like to kind of look at the portraits as a body of work and see where there are common themes. And what one fun part, I think, for us as the exhibit committee was when we were designing how we were going to install all the portraits in the gallery itself. And we kind of laid out all of them. We started to, it's one thing to see a portrait on its own and appreciate that and appreciate the story that goes with it. But when you see them together as a group, you start to see sort of some of those universal truths that pop up when you get to kind of put people next to each other. And so it was a lot of fun to be able to notice, what are the types of objects that people hold dear, that hold these stories. It can be pieces of jewelry. It can be pieces of clothing. It can be pieces of art. And once you realize that multiple people were selecting those types of objects, it gives you something to think about as far as your own personal experience and what objects you hold dear.
Let's talk about that process a little bit. And so how did we go about collecting the pictures that we got and how they became part of the exhibition?
So this was a community project, and so the participation was a public recruitment effort that really started publicly last year at the Asian American celebration. And we spent several months getting the word out, getting people used to the idea of maybe being in a museum exhibition. I think that people tend to be really modest about their own personal lives and think that someone like me, why would my story be important to be in a museum? And it's exactly those everyday stories that are important to document. And so we slowly but surely started to get the word out, and people started to fill out our recruitment form that we had on our website. And by the end of the summer, we had a great group of participants that resulted in what was ultimately 32 portraits in the exhibition.
Sorry, did you do any personal recruiting, or how did that work in AASoCV itself?
Oh, I did a lot of personal recruiting. I spread the word out, distributed flyers, sent the link to as many people as I could think of, posted it on my social media account. And I was really, surprised at the diversity of the ages, the nationalities, the objects, and the stories. They're all different. It's really true, and I've heard it so many times before, but this just proves the point. Everybody has a story. If somebody just wants to listen, everybody has a story to tell. And it was really, it's amazing how they all just fit in together.
Yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised by the geographic distribution of the people whose portraits we ended up using. They came and represented a good segment. There's no way you can try to do the whole of the community entirely, but it does have a good representation of lots of different cultures and ethnicities. Dave, what about you in terms of trying to photograph some of these folks? What were the kinds of challenges you faced?
So one challenge with portrait photography in the first place is every time the first 5 minutes are very awkward, and what am I supposed to do? And what do I do with my hands? Where do I do this? And part of it, I think the important part of it was talking to the people beforehand, getting an idea of what the story is and where to do it, and then agreeing to different locations to do it and tell the story. And then once I met them, a couple bad dad jokes would usually loosen up the audience a little bit, and they started to feel relaxed. And I'll say for the most part, there was never any really a plan. It was, let's try this. And it was amazing how, and quite often they would have ideas once they started feeling a little bit relaxed. And, it was a collaboration there as well. And yeah, we tried many things. Going to what Rosario said, it's amazing that everybody has a story. We just need to take the time to listen to it. And it's amazing what you can get out of them. I mean, the pictures don't capture the whole story. We have to sit there and listen to each other.
And I think we'll try to capture some of those stories here in a little bit, but I
avoided that on purpose.
But I would also like to ask everybody here, and feel free to kind of, speak up as you think of something here. But there's more to the program itself than just being able to go through the exhibition. One thing I don't think we mentioned here yet is that one of the really neat things to me about it is that it opened here on July 20, on the 17th, so a little more than a week ago, but it's going to run through Memorial Day of next year. And this provides lots of opportunities for programming in the community as a whole. And one of the things, there were two goals, I think, that we looked at right from the very beginning. One was to try to showcase, of course, the Asian American community and see what all it's made up of. But second, also to have the Asian American community really feel it's part of the city of Richmond and be able to become familiar with the city's museum and the city of Richmond. So what do you think will be the possibilities for looking at that goal there or those goals in upcoming months and the kinds of programming we can do? And I'll start with you, Meg.
Yeah, so our programming staff is hard at work developing events that will run throughout the course of the show. I won't share specifics because a lot of those dates aren't quite firm yet, but we know that people are busy these days, and you want to have a variety of different activities that are going to attract lots of different audiences. Given the title of the show, that in generations, that we hope that this project will resonate with multiple generations of families. So some of the things that you can expect will be events focused on family storytelling. So how can you capture your own family's stories and not miss those stories and take the time to record them? Certainly things that are events that are going to be family friendly and something that parents and kids can do. We're working with our education staff on making sure that as we have the school year starting and field trips beginning on site at the museum, that we have hundreds of kids throughout the Richmond region tour through this exhibition. Our hope as the Valentine is that everyone can see themselves in our exhibitions and in our programming. And I think that this is the type of project that can help do that. One goal, you mentioned making Asian Americans in Richmond more familiar with the Valentine. That's certainly a goal of ours. So one carrot we had for participants in the exhibition was that that they would receive a copy of their portrait, so that they can have that at home as well, as well as receiving a family membership to the Valentine, because we don't want participants in the exhibition to only visit us once for the opening of the exhibition, although we're thrilled that everybody came out. But we hope that you develop a relationship with the Valentine and do some of our other programming and become more familiar with other parts of Richmond history. So I think a good result of this project is that we have developed relationships with these organizations and all the individuals who've been involved in some sort of way with the project. And we hope to sustain those relationships moving forward.
And we had an event last Sunday that was part of the whole opening series of events. And Meg, I think you said there were 350 people that we know of, maybe more,
Yeah.
maybe less, but that were going by and getting clicked in as part of the audience that was there to see the exhibition. Rosario, how about you in terms of not just yourself, but what you see as an opportunity for AASoCV to build upon this?
Oh, it's we're actually gonna go ahead and continue to promote this exhibition because it's inspiring to see the stories. So we want for all of our 17 communities and its members to go through the exhibit and, like Meg said, see themselves in those pictures, see themselves in their stories, and think of their own stories. The one thing that really impressed me about this exhibit is that everybody had a chance to participate. You did not need to have done something tremendous, something big. It could, and for most of it, it's just their own personal stories.
And in some cases, I know when you were saying earlier that you were trying to get and recruit people here. I know that I reached out to a number of people and then had to continue to reach out to the same people in order for them to get to participate. But I think it really worked out. From that perspective too, Dave, did you see that reluctance to participate kind of in the photography of it as well?
I would say there were some people who reached out early and then they, despite multiple attempts, never responded back. But for the most part, the participation was very, they wanted to participate when they got it. They wanted to share their stories. Everybody that I think we dealt with or that we worked with were very willing and open. And a photo shoot, not 30 minutes. I mean, some of them probably lasted 2 hours or more because they were interested in sharing their story, but also creating a fun image.
And I think that's one of the key things. It was not just the storytelling, but it was really kind of a fun experience for everybody once they kind of got involved. I want to move to something that was said in the Valentine's press release that talked about really what the goals of the exhibition's overall goal was in terms of trying to tell these stories. And it says it offers a deeply human perspective on immigration, identity, and belonging. And I think we can probably segue into looking at some of the photos more specifically here. But as we talk about that, how does that phrase resonate with each of you, that immigration, identity, and belonging all take on a different meaning, or a better, deeper understanding from what the exhibition tries to do. Does anybody want to start with that?
Well, there really was a great diversity of stories. Each person had a different story, but you could see the theme, there's a common theme coming out of all of these stories. And it's basically how they belong and, their struggles to belong to their new community, to their new home, and the things that reminded them of home.
Yeah, that's kind of what I had in mind, looking at a lot of the stories and the objects. There were both objects that came from home that served as reminders and continued ties back to through one's family history and personal history. And then there's some objects that speak to someone's experience coming to Richmond, and certainly not everybody in the exhibition immigrated to Richmond. We certainly have a variety of different generations of individuals, but there are certain stories that talk about this object and then the associated story helping someone feel like they are belonging to the Richmond community and that process of joining the community. And those are two, I think, distinct themes that run through the exhibition.
I appreciate it. And I should have maybe mentioned at the beginning too, but the title of the exhibition being Generations. For me, it has two meanings. One is that there are really multiple generations represented in the exhibition. So we see that it's not just since 2000 or since 1985, where we're seeing this growth of the Asian American community, but there are many people who have resided in the area for a long time. Sorry, you were saying that, for example, the Asian American celebration has gone on for 27 years. So obviously there's been that connection all that time with being able to see that. And the other meaning for me of generations is that we're talking about the story really is touching upon all these generations that have been there, but also for generations to come, that we can see within the portraits themselves, different generations represented. And what did you learn from that, seeing all the different generations coming together?
I mean, how long do I have? No,
30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds. It was just such a wide variety of things. And I mean, there were individuals, for example, and I mean, we can kind of relate to it because we adopted our daughter out of Korea. Well, one of the individuals, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this.
Yes, go right ahead.
One of the individuals was one of, if possibly the first Korean adoptee after the Korean War. So she grew up in the United States without the Korean identity. And part of the story was, I'm going to say the story behind the story was actually coming to terms with her Korean identity that she didn't really grow up with. And one of the individuals lived in Richmond and he felt very out of place, and he was ready felt very out of place. And I'll just say he started working with a group. And while the group itself, he wanted the group to be the picture, but that would be too many releases for the project. So he selected an object that represented the group and all of the individuals that made him feel welcome in the Richmond area. Mm-hmm. So and there were tons of stories like this, but no, it was really interesting to see how. I'm
going to pause for a moment because the picture here in the back is that story here. I guess, would you like to read it, or do you?
Oh, well, I mean, I can read it. Yeah, in 2008, when I was 50 years old, I returned to South Korea to volunteer with Molly Holt and Dr. Cho, who in 1958 both picked me up off the floor of the Janet Wang Isabel Orphanage in Busan, South Korea, because the babies were dying of disease and malnutrition. Dr. Cho reported that my eyes followed her around the room. Molly also picked up my adopted brother, Charles. We were 4 and 5 months old but each weighed less than 5 pounds. We were covered with boils, mange, and lice. Molly held us for 36 hours to process our adoption and to fly on July 14th to Oregon to meet our adopted parents, Julie and Kurt Lurk of White House, New Jersey. When I was leaving Busan in 2008, Molly gave me this handmade hanbok, a traditional Korean dress. This hanbok connects me back to my true Korean beginnings and reminds me to celebrate the resilience of my Korean heritage and history. And in part, I mean, this photo, we chose the location because coming out of the water, so to speak, we've actually got another picture that we could have used, but it was very, I don't want to say sentimental, but it was very symbolic of that journey.
Let me ask you, Meg, indeed, we were given a number of different pictures of each of the people who was selected with their object. And we went through a little bit of a process to try to select the ones that matched it the best. You want to give us maybe how that process worked out and maybe an example or two of where it became a little dicey on which one to pick?
Well, I mean, it's always interesting with a show like this where you have new photography, and you have to look at each portrait shoot on its own. I think in some cases, there was no question that there was the shot, and we were all in agreement there was the strongest shot. I think for a couple of others, there were some different compositions I'm thinking in particular, Yumi and her daughters. She has that has a Japanese taiko drum group, and so Yumi, who's one of the participants, and her two daughters were photographed with their drums, and I think we had two different views. One half of, I think, the exhibit committee really preferred, and then half of the committee preferred the other. And so you got to pick one. And so sometimes it's a matter of looking at the overall group of images and seeing does one portrait have compositional elements that help support the rest of the exhibition. And certainly we were also looking at that story that was part of that person's participation. What image is telling that story the best? And so it's a little bit aesthetics. It's a little bit, again, looking at that narrative. And I think, we could have had 3 different exhibits with all different shots from these portrait sessions and had 3 great exhibitions. So it's a fun process.
I'm sorry, do you have one that kind of sticks out for you about the story and the object that?
Well, several actually. Well, the picture that Meg described now, it really, one of the things that struck me was that all 3 of them had their sticks and pointed right at the sun.
That wasn't planned at all.
And that, just looking at the aesthetics, like he's saying that he didn't have a plan. But if you look at all of the pictures, there's a lot of really photographic artistry that stands out and very outstanding. My favorite portrait is of Angel. She's this Chinese young girl, and she's holding a pipa
In front of him.
Yes, and she was photographed in the backdrop of a mural, and there are a lot of murals in Richmond. So just the mural itself is so Richmond. You look at the picture and you know right away that it's Richmond. Well, I knew right away it was Richmond. And Angel and her pipa, no question about it, is so Asian, and it's just the theme, Asian Americans in the Richmond region just came together. And this mural is so huge and so stark, but Angel with her pipa was not, overshadowed by the mural at all.
I'm glad you mentioned it because it is sort of the one that frames the exhibition in terms of the website and such. And this one, the picture that you can see here on the screen now, really shows it in fuller detail than the one that's on the website. But for me, I know when I first saw the photograph, I had to go through and say, I don't know what that instrument is called. And so I looked it up and I saw too that it wasn't just Chinese, but it really is very much in Southeast Asia as well, and variations on it. So that the music that you associate with it has lots of different variations that come along with along as part of the whole history of the instrument. Dave, your favorite?
Well,
Aside from the one you talked about already.
and I'll just mention Angel just for a moment. There's a little bit more significance to it because, well, one, we did want to make it, a lot of the stuff I did was to try and make it about Richmond, but this is a mural. And I'm going to say, we didn't realize it at the time, but this may be one of the last pictures taken in front of the mural because Richmond has allowed some things to occur where this particular location may not be accessible. There's not going to be murals there anymore. And this has been a very historical element of Richmond. I really can't, now going just to other favorites though. Every one of them was unique and a lot of fun. There's one, actually I'll talk about Sammy. Her father is a chef at a restaurant and her object was a meat cleaver. Well, there's so many sinister things you can do with a meat cleaver. So that became a story time. I mean, she initially went into the restaurant holding the meat cleaver like a purse. She went into the restaurant. I mean, she's got her boyfriend with, we can't show those pictures on, but her boyfriend her holding the cleaver under her boyfriend, as a very threatening bartender. And what we came up with was, okay, there's two versions of this. She's holding the meat cleaver and she's staring at the camera. One of them, black and white, was extremely ominous. While it was a wonderful picture, I absolutely love it. It probably wouldn't be fitting for the museum because the purpose of this wasn't to be an ominous picture. So we chose the color. And I mean, both of them were, I thought both of them were really, I love both of them. But I think the whole process of making that happen was very enjoyable as well. But I loved all the pictures.
And for me, it's difficult to pick out one particular picture, but if I had to, and I'm not going to show it here on purpose because we want to make sure you get down to Richmond and see it in person at the Valentine. So we're very limited in what we're showing here, but it would be with the cleaver because of certainly the suggestiveness of all the things you can do with the cleaver. So that's sort of, I think, what appeals to me, about that. And also there's something very expressive about her in that photograph that is wonderful.
Well, I knew her. She's a cosplayer.
Okay.
So that's kind of how I knew her because I photographed her at an event in Richmond.
Could you explain for people who don't know what cos is? Could you explain?
Okay, I like to. So I'm not a cosplayer. What cosplay is basically you put on costumes and you mimic the character that the costume represents. And what I love about the cosplay world is it's wonderful for photographers because what you get are a lot of very introverted people who put on costumes and become somebody else and become extremely outgoing. And it's a wonderful, I mean, it's fun. If you've never been to a cosplay event, you really have to go.
Rosario, for you, what was maybe the most fun or interesting part of the process or the selection or finally the way the exhibition turned out?
Well, the early activities of like trying to get people to volunteer was, was challenging, and we were hoping that we would get enough participants because we are not pointing out. We're not pinpointing people to say, come represent this sector, come represent this career, come represent this community, or, it's basically people volunteering to come and tell their story. And it was just amazing. The most wonderful feeling is when I walked through that exhibit hall and looked and saw how everything just came together so beautifully. I mean, the pictures, the stories are so touching. They're deeply personal, touching on, common themes of identity and immigration, but also the aesthetics of the whole thing. each picture was just, oh, you had this one lady, there was this one lady who loved flowers and photography and yeah, and then so the picture of the lady was I forget her name.
Lily.
Yeah, was blurred, but she had a clear picture right there on the camera.
Yeah, what she does is she loves flowers blooming and just growth in general, but she likes taking time-lapse video of the plants blooming. So what we did is we set up her camera. So it was pointing at the picture and then rather than focus, and then she was living the bloom, so to speak. And then we focused on the back screen of the camera, which is what you would see if you were doing the time-lapse photography. And that was one of those spur of the moment, hey, this would be a cool idea, let's try it. Lily, go stand over there, and it worked out.
Meg, you've put together a lot of exhibitions over the years. So especially if you're comparing what's happening with this exhibition with maybe your other experiences, what stood out to you as maybe the most fun and interesting thing there?
Well, I was actually going to ask, I think we have some photos showing the installation of the exhibit. If you could put those up, just so everyone can kind of get a sense of, because you're seeing some of the portraits individually, which is one experience, but it's very different seeing it sort of together. And so this is the exhibition as it's installed. And what I love about this show is that it's when you see everything installed together, the color and the vibrancy, and there's so much joy in all of the portraits. Now, not every story is necessarily carefree and happy. They're very serious and sometimes sad stories that are told, but the portraits have this joy in them that makes it a very uplifting experience. And not every exhibition is like that. I've certainly developed exhibitions that are thoroughly serious, and that's a different experience. But this one is one where I think that once you've gone through the exhibition and you've taken in all the stories and the portraits, you'll come out of it uplifted, which is I think something we all need.
And say something about that opening panel and the designer that we had who used that.
The Generations logo design is designed by a woman named Emily Park. She is the graphic designer that we work with for all of our exhibitions. She is Korean. And the funny thing is that, so I contacted her sometime last year about developing this logo. And as she was working on it, her husband got kind of interested in it, and he decided to be part of the show. So the gentleman that Dave referenced, who was part of the group, it's an exercise group that helped him find community and belonging in Richmond. That is her husband, and so we have these great networks of relationships that have come out of this exhibition. And the logo itself, what the goal is to really speak to that idea of generations. So you see the different types of fonts some feel a little bit more modern, some feel a little bit more traditional, with the hope that they meld together. And you'll see that there's a variety of different designs and patterns. It was really a challenge with a show like this that included so many different Asian communities. How did we come up with an identity for the project itself without being stereotypical in any sort of way, but also not favoring a particular Asian culture over another? And so we had a couple of tries of figuring out what this design would be, and she finally settled on using patterns, which I think ended up finding that middle ground and something that feels fresh and, again, joyful, but distinctly Asian. So we had a fun time developing that. And that was something that, we as a committee had conversations about. I will say there is no curator for this exhibition. Everything was done collaboratively by all community partners, which made it a really fun project to work on, quite frankly.
So at the same time, you're saying there was no curator for it. In a sense, we all were,
we were all curators, including the participants, because the text in the exhibition, the individual text associated with each portrait is first person narrative by that participant. And so you have no intervening curator who's telling that story. It's a first person telling.
And would you say just a word about the two panels that are next to the generations introduction things, so that people have a little bit of context of the Asian American community in which?
So we thought it was important for visitors to the exhibition to get a sense of, how big is the Asian American community in the Richmond region? How has it grown over the years? So we worked with Plan RVA, which is the Richmond Region Planning Commission, to put together and visualize some data from the last 20 years. So there's a bar chart at the top there showing the growth of Asian Americans from 2000, 2010, 2020 in the Richmond region. And you see that there have been about 35,000 new Asian Americans come into the Richmond region since 2000. And then below there's that is a map showing the Richmond region and where the highest concentration of Asian Americans are in Richmond. It's really the western part of Henrico is the greatest concentration, and that's for a variety of reasons. A lot of it started in the 70s with refugees coming, settling in an area, and then that growing. And then we also have a lot of large employers like Capital One, Dominion, that are attracting Asian Americans to the Richmond region, and they're settling in what is the western part of the region. And so just to give you a little bit of a sense of what the community looks like today, not 50 years ago.
So I think I want to leave it to see if there's some questions here. We have some people in the room. They might have some questions. And then I'd like to finish up with asking one more question of each of you just to see how and leave the audience with a few thoughts about that. But do we have any questions from people here in the audience?
This is fascinating. This is really incredible. And I get attuned to this because I have some family that are of Virginia Beach. And we're talking like when you're talking about generations, they're talking about third, fourth generation Asian American now. What I would love to know is that in your exhibit, did you have, like you call it generations, did you have like a single family that was represented with multiple generations?
We have two, and this is something unplanned. Again, we did not actively recruit this. We have two different portraits. I don't think we have slides of those that ended up being group portraits of families of two different generations. So we did end up, or were there three? Oh yeah, you're right. There are three different family portraits representing different generations of different families in Richmond.
And then kind of told their individual stories or their stories as a family?
It was really more as a family. Yeah. And of course, each one is different. I don't know if Dave, do you want to talk about one, maybe the calendar or?
Yeah, well, the calendar one, there again, you don't realize the stories people have until you actually listen to their stories. And one of the families, basically when her mother was born, and she was born 1940s China, just as the communist Chinese were taking over and invading China. So on the day her mother was born, her grandfather in this case, wrote on a calendar, my daughter is born, or whatever it was. And he kept that in his wallet until the day he died. And now, they're still keeping it. But then you hear the story behind the story, what happened shortly thereafter. And I'll probably get a little bit of the details wrong, but they were they had train tickets to go to Shanghai to escape the takeover of the communist Chinese. They got on the train and a young lady was begging them, and I think they were family friends, I'm not positive of that, but begging them, please take my brother, because if you don't take my brother, they'll kill him. So as the train was leaving, they pulled the brother into the train. Very shortly thereafter, the Chinese soldiers centered their rifles on him and demanded that they throw this child out of the train while it was moving. And from what they quelled the situation with food. And so they did not make him throw the child out of the train. They got to Shanghai. They left the child, I believe, with friends in Shanghai as they came to the United States. And they reunited One ended up in Chicago, another ended up in Virginia, and it was just a really cool story behind it. But when you hear all of what took place, it is kind of heart-wrenching.
They still had that calendar.
The
date.
calendar page too.
That's the connection.
Yeah,
You know, because my father's older, my dad was born 35, so it's
Okay.
9, right?
Right.
And these are the stories that they had, because they had to leave the country, like, and it's those generations.
Exactly.
There are also 4 portraits that represent, a couple of them represent father and son,
Mhm.
but they're
Yes.
2 separate portraits, and then there's a mother and daughter.
That's true. Yeah,
Yes.
we had a couple of families where there were individual portraits, individual stories, but they are related to each other, which is fun.
So first of all, Meg was our David Teeth, such a wonderful exhibit. First, as soon as I stepped in, I said, this is a great exhibit, right? And it's a great exhibit because it's a little bit understated as opposed to others. The photography is just superb. The storyline is great. I just love that. And then hearing from you, this thing is a community project. And I have worked with Ting-Yi way back in the Tenement Museum thing, trying to figure out how individual stories could be told this way. But where you have taken it, I love this idea. It's actually a community story. And the idea of Rosario saying, I had to go chase everybody down, and pretty soon everybody wanted to participate. Because we've always said that before. Everyone has a story. You should listen to it, and you could, but then you have to put it together in a way that you have done. What I like to suggest is one of the things to do is after the exhibit has its run in Richmond, take it here, bring it here, bring the exhibit as it is. We'll set it up. We'll work with you, try to set it up at, say, the Pepco Gallery or something of this sort. And then do the same thing. Show that this represents the Asian American community in Richmond, but it actually represents the community in general. You can get a sense of these stories, individual stories put together, and give an impression of the Asian American story, right? Or just American story, a part of the American story which happens to be Asian, right? And the best time to do that would be APA Heritage Month in May, right? Bring that over here. And there are so many of these exhibits I see at the APA Heritage Month are talking about a single thing, an American immigration story, a careful story, exclusion, that kind of stuff. But this one allows you to show what a community is thinking. And when you put it together, you come to a sense or understanding of what is an Asian American community. It doesn't matter that it's in Richmond. The fact that it's in Richmond helps actually, because you're able to say, this can be brought over here in wherever we are, Washington, DC, and it tells people a lot of things. And I love the idea of Rosario, David, and Meg just thinking through what are the good, best stories represent, how to do it, and then allowing that person his own voice and their own images. Wonderful photography. I thought it was great. And then bringing it over here and allowing people to make their own conclusions. And hopefully you all come and also have the same sort of panel talking about how it was created. Just talking about how it was created, I find quite inspiring. Talking about how the community came forth to start putting it together. Anyway, that's my suggestion. And again, just sort of a congratulations for something that's really well done. I actually made a pitch for you guys at the Smithsonian yesterday. Let you go over there and say, you gotta go to Richmond to go see this exhibit, right? And so, I want to continue making that. I hope that APA Heritage let's figure out a way to bring it over here. Exactly this exhibit, and then have this kind of discussion exhibit.
I think, well, we have a problem in that this is still going to be up in Richmond in May. But
This will be on view until through Memorial Day next year, which I think is May 25th. So we can talk though, we can figure out something. And I will say that after the physical run of the show at the Valentine, we will turn it into a digital exhibition so that it can live on forever and reach lots more audiences. So this will not be the end.
June, July is fine too.
Okay.
June is actually another Heritage Month for Asians, but July, 250th anniversary of the Constitution, right?
Yep.
And we could figure out something like that.
We can talk.
And I, think too, that speaking much more broadly about what to do with this material and information and all that, for the future, from an educator's point of view, there's so much that is here that is possible and very rich in source material to be able to use. For example, just a story about, the Korean War. That's focus of why that person, came to the United States as a result of an adoption. But for young students who may not know a whole lot about the Korean War and its impact and its what it means for human migration, which is a major theme that you have to cover in schools, this is a lead into it. Or the thing about, the Chinese communist takeover in 1949, that these things that spurred people moving from one place to another, or the Vietnamese community in another place. So that's where I think educationally we will be looking very much at what the future holds, but also to see what kinds of other things we can do that build upon it. And we've now heard from Megan the thing here, but sorry, what would you like to see happen in the future with this?
What Meg suggested, though, because at the beginning of this project, we were actually talking of that possibility. And so now we have it confirmed that it will be converted into a digital exhibit and would reach so many more people.
And Atlanta, and then Chicago.
Well, I mean, a couple real quick things. One is, what was the limit on the words? Was it 150, 200 words-ish?
It's tough with museum labels or exhibit labels. You have to meet visitors where they are, and people need small chunks of narrative, but that means that you're not going to get the full story, which can be tough.
And so where I would like to possibly go with that is see if anybody would like to share their story on video for the electronic exhibit or the digital exhibit, and whether it's a question and answer or just, this is my story. I think that would be something that would be wonderful. And I really like the idea of the Smithsonian. But sharing the concept, whether it's this exhibit or, I mean, my biggest takeaway was there again, talk to people, and it doesn't matter what ethnicity, where they came from, just talk to people, listen to their stories, because everybody's got a story someplace else. So this might expand outside of this someday as well, but this is what we've got now. So it's,
we're point I wanted to make this is on the think about this, and we'll figure out. But it is the process of coming together to tell stories, share story.
exactly.
That is based our fundamental creed here. It's the process of telling and sharing stories that strengthens the community. And what you guys done is shown how that can be done for a couple of years, and what it materializes and so forth. So regardless of the story, sad or happy, and by the way, all those stories you mentioned, including the Cleaver, were things that I kind of did too, but it is that process, and you've shown how that process can be done. And that is the creation of a sense of community.
I think it's time for hearing kind of a last word from everyone. Sorry, I'm going to start with you. What do you think you want to have people take away from what we've all said today?
Everybody has a story. All it takes is for us to listen, just sit down and listen. And for the one telling the story too, is to have that courage to tell your story. Because sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy to open up your, make yourself vulnerable by telling such personal stories. But if they see these exhibit and the stories behind them, they can identify with these same stories. It might make them, give them a little bit more courage to share their story, celebrate the differences.
Thank you for mentioning that. I think that's kind of a key thing that we need to reinforce, that part of the problem in drawing out the stories from people is not that they didn't want to tell the stories, but they needed something to really kind of give them that little extra bit of encouragement and courage that was part of what then finally became part of the story. How about for you?
Oh, what she said. I mean, along the same lines, and when you want to hear the story or give people the opportunity to tell the story, and sometimes you do need to break the ice because there is tension. They don't want to hear what I have to say. Let them know that you want to hear what they have to say and relate to them. I mean, it's obviously, I am not of Asian descent, but there were stories in there and things in there that I could definitely relate to. And it kind of shows how, as a human community, we've all got ties as well. I don't know what else
I
to.
think that's great. Give the last word to you, Meg.
I think that a project like this shows, because people volunteered hundreds of hours of time for this particular project, and countless hours for Asian American celebration and all the other events and activities that AASoCV does, and but community involvement is really important.
Yes.
In person, in this day and age where people are coming out of feeling so isolated, getting involved in organizations and being active is really important for building our community and for people to be able to relate to each other. I'm so grateful for everyone that I worked with on this project, and know that we'll be in touch, after this project. And the exhibit was a great excuse to be able to meet everybody, but being, active in your community and involved in community organizations and civic organizations is really important for moving our region forward. And so, if an exhibit like this can help with that, just the tiniest little bit, then I feel like we've been successful.
And I think, as Ted has been suggesting here too, by celebrating this community here in Richmond and in Central Virginia in general, this is really an opportunity for others really to kind of see what can be done in their own communities. And that's really a goal that we have. I think throughout 1882, we have urban Chinatowns initiative that's going on that I think will help. I mean, rural Chinatowns, just the opposite of what I was saying. So that we can kind of explore those stories of community building that are really present all around the country, but from a different perspective. So I just want to thank you all for having come up all the way from Richmond for this, and really appreciate our chance to really talk in depth about what this exhibition is, and also extend an invitation and opportunity for everybody to go down to Richmond and experience the exhibition in person. And if you needed more information, just reach us through the 1882foundation.org website. And thank you all very much. Now, informally, if people have some other questions, just to ask, and also just reactions that we have.
Camera.